All right, Donnie, here's your first video regarding footwork. So I have a system basically that breaks down all the components of footwork, and you kind of need to pay attention to all of them so you get a good flow, basically. So the first thing, being a bigger guy, a lot of people mess up their stance. I like to have my feet or my legs about shoulders width apart, maybe a little bit wider. You can tell from this stance they're a little bit wider. The reason for that is because when I bend my legs, if they're shoulders width apart, and I bent my legs, I'd be in a really awkward position with my shins. Now basically I want my stance to be as wide as basically I want my knee right behind my elbow. So the first thing I'm gonna get my stance. This back leg, so for the case of this video, this is your lead leg and your rear leg, right? Now, your rear leg can be 90 degrees like this. This foot can be slightly cantered in if you want. It doesn't actually matter. Depending on how your hips work, you'll want it one way or the other. For this case, we're gonna go 90 degrees. So if I get my feet about this far, right, and I sink my weight down, my knee is about in line with my elbow. So that if I lean forward a little bit, right, now my knee is in line with my elbow. Why is this important? This is important because when I go to block, if my knee is a little bit in line with my elbow, I can reach out and I can block. If I'm wider and I go to block, my knee's now in front of my hand and now I'm getting hit in the side of the leg, right? So you want your stance a little bit narrower, enough to where you can cover your body when you block. Now, stepping. The reason you get in a stance and you sink your weight is that if my weight is really high up and I want to move, it's like having a loose chassis in a car or loose suspension. When I move, my weight shifts with my body, and if it's really high up, I'm going to be moving a lot more than I want, or stopping my momentum is going to be very difficult. So if I'm in a stance and I step, my torso stays in line with my feet, okay? And it allows me to move very quickly. So if I'm in a good stance and I step forward and I need to step back, I can do that because my weight is over the center of my feet, okay? I'm gonna switch my feet because I hurt my hip. So we're start with basic steps. The first thing you're gonna have is a half step. And the reason that this is called a half step is because you're not gonna move both your feet. So a half step, from my stance, I'm gonna lift this leg, I'm gonna step heel to plant. Okay? You don't necessarily have to do that. Being a bigger guy, I would recommend it. Normally you're gonna stay on the ball, normally you would stay on the ball of your foot, and I would pick my foot up and land on the ball of my foot. In this case, I want you to gently roll across it. And all we're doing is practicing doing this. Okay? This is very good for making an initial attack where you don't think you're gonna have to chase somebody, and you just need to quickly get into range, hit them, and then reset. This is also good for jabbing them and resetting into your stance. This is good for arm shots. This is good for hitting offside chest. Anything where you just need to quickly jump in and jump out. Now, if you had to chase somebody and say, when I take a half step forward, they're also going to take a half step back, what would I do? I would bring this foot up with my first step. So I would go, and that's 2 steps basically. That is a full step. So from here, I take a half step and I bring this back foot up. Now I've actually gained range on my opponent, and say, hypothetically with this first step, they move back, I can half step again and hit them, okay? Now this half step, there's a fine line between this simple step, which is about a foot to 18 inches, and a lunge. And a lunge is basically gonna be like, as far as I can basically reach with my chest still high and hitting my opponent. And this is basically gonna be about 3 feet for most people. I don't want you to work on this right now. I just want you to master getting in your stance and taking a half step, getting in your stance and taking a full step, and taking a full step back. So what I'm gonna do is I want you to download an app called Tabata Timer. You're gonna set the rounds for 1 minute on and 15 seconds off, maybe 10. As low as you can possibly go to still do this. and you're gonna do about 12 rounds of this, okay? So the first round, you're gonna practice sitting in your stance, and you're just gonna take a half step and retreat. Half step, retreat. Half step, retreat for a minute, okay? And that's all I want you to do. Now I want you to vary how much you're stepping. So maybe I step a little bit and I retreat. Maybe I step a little bit bigger and I retreat. Go forward, back for 1 minute. Then you're gonna go to full steps, or I'll switch feet. So I'll switch stance. Forward, back, forward. For 1 minute, okay? And while you're doing this, I want you to think about your balance. How much does your torso move when you step? How much does it creep forward, and then you need to lean back to rebalance yourself? Ideally, I want you to practice staying balanced the entire time that you're doing this. Half step, back. I'll do a minute like that. Then I'll switch my stance back to the original version, and we're gonna do full steps. So into here, full steps. Again, thinking about staying balanced. We'll switch stance again, full steps again. Full steps, bang. So that's 4, right? Those are 4 rounds. You're gonna do those 3 times each, okay? Does that make sense? So you're gonna do half steps and full stance in one, half steps and full steps in one stance, and you do half steps and full steps in the other stance. We're gonna practice both, okay? It's the very basics of just going here, and like that. And having those 2 tools in your toolbox is huge. So once you've done 12 rounds of that, I then want you to do 12 more rounds, and this is just footwork, okay? Same exact thing, except now we're gonna take an angle. So instead of stepping forward like this, we're gonna be stepping laterally. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna turn your foot out a little bit, or you may need to compensate for your weight a little bit more. So when I step this way, my foot is actually angled in. And the reason it's angled is because if I was facing you, right, and I step out like, if I stepped out straight, when I throw, my knee and my hips and my knee aren't in line with my hand, and I won't be able to generate good power. So this foot's gonna turn in, and I'm gonna be able to rotate in, okay? So from here, we're gonna go. And again, you can roll your weight through your heel and into the front of your foot, okay? Ideally, keep this stance even, and we're just stepping here, right? Next round, I'll switch feet, we're here, and I'm just moving, boom, boom. Switch feet again. Now I'm gonna bring this back foot up. Boom, 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 boom. Drive, I want you to drive with this back leg to help you keep balance. If you kind of like lean forward, you're gonna be leaning and you'll end up off balance, and there won't be any weight on this back leg. Ideally, I want you to stay balanced this entire movement so that when I take this step forward, if I needed to quickly step back, I can. If I'm too far forward and there's no weight on this leg, I have to shift my weight back and then push off. It's gonna slow you down a lot. Okay, so we have a step forward, right, straight at the opponent, and we have a step lateral, straight at the opponent. And I just want you to work on these 2 things. The reason being is that we're gonna transfer this to our pelling, and it's gonna come in when we do our pelling. Because the true benefit of footwork is, footwork by itself doesn't actually do anything. You have to practice it with your strikes and stuff like that. So now I'm gonna go over to pelling with you.